Dragon Con's just magic. It is the Disneyland of cons.
Can tell me a story.
All right, Jebby, what do we got tonight?
Speaking of conventions, because you were just talking about conjuration, Daddy, tell me a story about a convention moment that made you realize these are my people.
Do you have one in mind? I'm gonna think on some. Do you have one already geared up?
Just walking around in general. So my first convention was my first big convention was Gen Con.
Because you went to play not Bakugan.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Thank you.
Yeah. And so my main focus there was the gaming hall because I went there and I was walking around, sat down, pulled out some cards, and people would just walk up. So I was there for the whole weekend and people just walk up, "Hey, you want to play? Hey, you want to play?" And I was like, yeah, these are my people, because that's what I was there for. That's what I wanted to do. And it was a ton of fun. I didn't go to any panels or anything like that. I walked the vendor hall very briefly, and yeah, I had a have you ever watched Big Bang Theory?
Yeah.
Had a bit of a Big Bang Theory moment because Sean Astin was supposed to be there and he ducked out at the last minute, and I was like, Astin. But no, yeah, it was a ton of fun. And it was a great experience.
I like that. You know, honestly, I've got two, because no matter what you do as a performer, as a creator, as a anything else there that interacts with people in the public, podcast or whatever, you're never quite sure how things work. And there's times when the audiences aren't quite there. So the first one would be I went to like New Media Expo, which was kind of a mix of Dragon Con and business conventions for podcasting. And it was just cool talking to other people who are into podcasting and those kind of things. But it was like, take it or leave it for me. But I got them to pay for me to go to Dragon Con. And that's the first time I ever went to Dragon Con. That was the moment. I went to the podcasting room, and on the table, I don't remember every name because only some of them are memorable, and some of the other people haven't come back. But on the table was Brian Ibbett, who I'd met previously that year for the first time at New Media Expo when he was getting another award for Coverville. Brian Brushwood, who does Night Attack and Rogue something. Scam School is what he does. Hey, Lost Slimy. Welcome in. Good to see you. It had Mark Gunn on it with a few other people. And I did not know Mark Gunn then. But I've told this story, and I'll tell it again here. This is how I knew it was my people. Is I asked a question from the back of the room, because the kickoff was a full room. And I asked a question from the back of the room. It happened to be during the Adam Carolla lawsuit. He was being sued by somebody who owned the word podcast and this and that and the other. So I asked about that and got some interesting answers. But I made a mark, asked a different and interesting question. But I introduced myself like I always do. And at the time, my show was Success Freaks. I went, Charles McFall, host of Success Freaks. And I think then I asked my question. When they answered it, Mark Gunn goes, Success Freaks? Is that Ricky, our morning Mon, Ricky Robinson? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'm Mark Gunn. I'm like, I can see your tag. He's like, no, I'm like the guy he talked to about the podcast. Because originally it wasn't called Success Freaks. It was called The Other Side of Live. And we did a section at the end called Success Freaks. And Mark, doing the Irish and Celtic Music podcast, Ricky was asking, they were working the same Renaissance Festival at the time. And so he's talking to Mark about podcasting, and Mark's like, why don't y'all just call it Success Freaks? That's your best segment. Why don't you just do that? And that did change my trajectory. So Mark is a bit responsible for the monster that I am today. But that was the moment. It's like at that table, three out of the five people had already knew me. One was without my knowledge, was very involved in my career already. And then that year, Ibbott and I became partners and built some shows coming out of that year. And then I ran around just asking people, like Tom Merritt asked some questions and other people. And yeah, just watching the panels, that's when I was like, oh, I need to start getting into the con world because this is really cool. The second one is just this weekend at Conjuration. Fandom. This is what I was talking about when you start something new, you're not sure how it's going to be received. I was actually a little nervous to bring it to Dragon Con last year, Fandom Face Off, because I've been practicing it in smaller cons around, and Rob Roberts really helped me refine it after Southern Fried last year. And so we took the new form to Dragon Con, and it killed. And that was fun.
Oh, yeah, that room was packed.
101 players. The room was packed. The energy was on point. Phil and...
Jenna?
No, it wasn't Jenna.
Oh, no.
Jenna's
Alex.
Alex P. Yeah, thank you. Alex P. Alex and Birds. They did a great job knowing me, knowing the room, working the jokes quickly. But it was that Conjuration that were there, and I got the crowd I thought I would get there. There was 4 or 5 people there. 2 of them being Tyra and Shane, right? But I just focused on building the show, and this is where I'm like, okay, cons are definitely my people. This game show is definitely something I should be doing because I just focus on putting the show on and not what I think the audience wants or anything else. Just did a little, here's a quick way to do it. Here's the setup. Here's the trolls. And you all both were really funny trolls. And at the end of it, got asked excitedly, do you take this to other conventions? Which I'd been asked before once or twice, but not in the way it was asked here.
Not with the enthusiasm that it was asked.
Like when I'm like, yeah, it's going to be at Stellar Fest. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, we came to Stellar. We're going to go to Stellar Fest. Southern Fried Gaming. And when I said Dragon Con, they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like, we missed that. Like, well, And then they turned around because I was giving them house points and whatever, and then turned around to come back to the table and like, what's your podcast? And I was like, oh yeah. Why is it nerdy? Scan a QR code. I have my QR code jersey on that day. But that's it. It's there. Look, there's a weirdness to conventions and the people who go to conventions, without a doubt. Everybody goes for their own reasons. But that's what makes it perfect for me, is I can go for the reason of working and performing and connecting, and it's my people. So how is it for you?
Yeah, no, there is an energy at conventions that you just don't have other places. And regardless of what your niche is, you will find like-minded people, which you may not find in your normal day-to-day life. And they conveniently tell you, hey, this is where you'll find your niche by, having different panels of different subjects. And so, yeah, you go to these conventions and you end up in a room where people can just nerd out about what you want to nerd out about. And it's fun.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. It's man, I'm losing it now. What was your first big panel that you went to?
First big panel that I went to? Like
something maybe the room was full of, maybe you got in line because you're excited. You really wanted to make sure you saw whatever that panel was about.
There were a couple of panels that first year that I went to where I got in line an hour ahead of time because any more than that, and they were like, yeah, no, you can't line up yet, which makes sense because that's
sometimes
how the rooms
they'll let
work.
you do a little bit more, but yeah, it's whatever. Sorry.
But yeah. But those panels, I that first year, I was like, I was wanting to see, the big celebrities and things like that. And I've just found that in general, that's not what I like the best at cons. So I've gone to some of the bigger panels, but only if I know that I can get in relatively easily, like because it's on our track or things like that, or I'll show up when they're letting in, and if there's room, there's room. If there's not, there's not. And so I don't waste time sitting in lines at the con, because I don't want the con to be lines. Um,
And there, some people do, right?
yeah.
In my first experience, I like that I've gotten to experience a lot of the different ways cons come around. But at Dragon Con, I went and got in line for Arrow.
Yep. The
Yeah,
Arrowverse.
yeah. It was actually Stephen Amell was there, and then Robbie Amell came out. He had just
His brother.
left Legends of Tomorrow. Well, it wasn't planned that way. I don't think Stephen even knew he was coming. I think Robbie just decided to crash the panel because it was just a Q&A with Stephen Amell. And they told stories that you don't get to hear otherwise, right? And that was fun. I was like, okay, I kind of get it because I've seen videos of the standard questions. What do you think about shooting this episode? Don't care. But to hear Stephen Amell, who at that point was at the end of season 3, they're about to debut season 4, I think it was. So he's just really, he's established and he's this really strong character and all this other, to talk about how nervous he was to get the call and how he's sitting on the stairs and Robbie was there with him when he got the call and they're acting like, little school kids excited. To see that was fun. And then at the end of that panel, they launched for the first time, it hadn't even been put out on the internet yet. They launched the trailer to season 4. So you got a sneak peek. So I got to experience that kind of excitement. The crowd went nuts, right? I don't remember anything about the season or the trailer. It was just a cool moment. And that also was the same year that Stargate was doing its last hoorah. It was 10 years after they had ended the season. So they did 10 seasons. And then for 10 years, they had toured cons talking about it. And they, as a group, I mean, they'll still come and do some things separately. But as a group, they went, yeah, we're not touring on Stargate anymore. And we really got some really unhinged and fun stories and moments. And that's what I live for, is to hear those, but to really be a part of those. Registers for me more.
See, one of my favorite bigger celebrity panels was a Smallville panel I went to. And they had Tom Welling and they had Michael Rosenbaum up there and a few others. Tom was super reserved and really didn't talk unless asked a specific question. But Michael, he was in his element. Like when
he hosts his own podcast. Like he's a good host.
But yeah, when he first started walking up, he's like, yeah, this isn't going to work. Give me a wireless microphone ASAP. And so he took that wireless mic and he used it to all of its benefit. He did not stay seated at all.
Nice.
He was running around. He was like right up next to the people asking questions in line and talking to them, interacting with them right next to them. There was one point where this person in a wheelchair raised their hand to be brought a wireless mic, and Michael went over and sat in her lap and held the microphone up to her, and just he worked that room so good, and he had so much charisma. But then I've been on panels where they were clearly hungover and didn't want to be there, and those ones are like, really.
Look, man,
really?
We have to do the wrap-up panel every year, even though I'm hungover and don't want to be there.
No, I'm talking about a big celebrity, and I'm not going to...
I know. No, there's I couldn't even guess because there's a number of those stories.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. But I think it was her first time at Dragon Con, and she definitely partied too hard the night before because she was very hungover. And to make it worse, so you can kind of get away with that if there's an ensemble panel, but she was by herself with the moderator.
Oof.
And so stuff like that, you're just like, nope.
Choices, man.
Nope.
I honestly, right now, hardly remember my own names. I don't remember the 2 actors that did this, but we believe, as the story goes, I was not part of it, did not see it, but as the story goes, we believe they had not gone to bed before they came to their like 11 a.m., 12 p.m. panel or something about. So they'd been up drinking, and they were. It was a little obvious, and it was an experience. It's not a story that's told as a they'll never be back kind of story, but it's a story that's told through moderator training. Going, you have to you still have to corral that, and you still have to manage
Yeah.
that, and make sure that they still look good, even though it's obvious they've been out partying all night.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's only so much moderator can do when they come with zero energy.
No, yeah, you're right. But yeah, honestly, go ahead and roll the dice. I think not all cons are for all people, but the ones that we go to that we agree on, there's one that might be on the cutting block this year. We've talked about, and we don't want to misalign anybody, misalign, whatever. We don't want to say bad crap about people because it's not their fault. But there's just ones that click and ones that don't, and we were pulling 7, 8 people per panel most of the time. Sometimes a lot less in the case of 1 or 2 panels you were on. But I always get inspired by something at the cozy cons, and I always get inspired by something at the corporate cons, and Dragon Con's just magic. It is the Disneyland of cons.
Yeah. I don't care for a lot of corporate cons. So, but I get why some people like them. It's just that's not my
No, yeah,
my jam.
And for those of you who don't know, Corporate Con is Atlanta Comic Con. There's going to be a slew, I mean, double digits of celebrities, and the whole vendor hall, 3/4 of that celebrities, and the other quarter is people just selling stuff.
Well, and when the vendor hall is the primary focus, because you're talking Atlanta Comic Con.
I mean, that's a corporate con, yeah.
The panels were an afterthought.
Absolutely, but
other than the celebrity panels, the celebrity panels weren't as much of an afterthought, but all of the rest of them were an afterthought.
Yeah, and they've really gotten much better about aligning with panels and panelists and letting upstarts, as they see us, right? We've not made a name in Celebrityville yet, so but they let us come and do things, and it's gotten better. So I always give Atlanta Comic Con and FanX credit for working that, but that's what they know. They know that they'll pull in a crowd and make money by selling Katie Sackhoff photos and autographs, and they had a ton of. But we were excited. We walked around and saw a whole bunch of booths and talked about how cool some of that stuff was. But I do get ideas, and it's I would never pay to go to one of these things. And I love Supernatural, and they have their own convention.
Yeah,
and I just can't make myself pay to go to it because I don't like fanboying out on people. I like going, I love your work, and here's why, and then follow up, can we work together? And that's really not what an attendee is meant for.